22 with the 262nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Brock Purdy, a quarterback from Iowa State. Go Niners!
If I could have gone back in time 20 months ago and told you that one of the players selected in the 7th round of that year's 2022 NFL Draft will go on to become an MVP candidate at some point in his career, you would probably be impressed, but not all that shocked. We've seen plenty of late draft picks get into the NFL and carve out very good to Hall of Fame level careers. Guys like Shannon Sharpe, Terrell Davis, Tom Brady, Marcus Colston, Julian Edelman, and Jay Ratliff were all 7th round draft picks who have a combined 16 Super Bowl championships, 7 Super Bowl MVPs, 4 regular season MVPs, 16 All-Pro, and 30 Pro Bowl selections between the 6 of them. Those guys got their chance and ran with it, proving all the doubters and so-called experts wrong. Now, what if I went back those same 20 months ago and got a bit more specific by telling you that it's not just any 7th round pick, it is in fact the very last pick, Mr. Irrelevant himself, who will go on to become a candidate to win the MVP award. That would probably come across as a bit more shocking and would be one of the sport's greatest underdog stories. To go from an afterthought on draft day to then becoming one of the league's most prominent players after some time. Coaches across the world would use that as motivational pieces to get their players and teams to never give up and never doubt themselves. Now, what if I told you that the former Mr. Irrelevant is not just a MVP candidate, but he is the leading MVP candidate and will end up winning the award not just at some point in his career, but exactly 1 year after getting drafted.
What? Boy, ain't no way, boy.
How, Sway?
What the hell?
Yeah, I would have reacted that way too. But this is one of those rare moments in sports where reality is just odder than fiction. Brock Purdy, just 20 months ago, was the very last pick in the NFL draft. And now, 1 year later, in December of 2023, he's going to win the MVP award. And while the winner has not officially been announced, unless Brock just forgets how to play football over the last 3 games of this year, the MVP will go to him. And honestly, it's not a close race at all. To say that Brock Purdy has had a good season would be a massive understatement. To say that he's had a great season would also be a minimization of what he's done this year. What Brock has been doing in the NFL this year has been nothing short of all-time great, as he is statistically putting together one of the best seasons we have ever seen a player have from that position. So let's talk about what makes Brock's season so great and how it even ascends to the levels of historically great. But before we get into that, as always, if you haven't already, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end of the video, comment down below what your thoughts are, if you liked it, if you disliked it, what you agreed and what you disagreed with. Also, shouts out to one of my closest friends, one of my brothers, who have given me the inspiration for this video. This was a conversation we'd had about a week ago in terms of who we thought should win the MVP award. And I'm not going to say his name, but shouts out to you for giving me the inspiration to make this video. Brock Purdy is not just simply the leading candidate to win the MVP award, but he is in fact the only player who should win the award this year. And this isn't just backed up by his play on the field. This isn't just backed up by his jaw-dropping statistics, but this claim is also backed up by history, as the path that Brock is treading down has only been traveled by a few men before him, and each of them were gifted the MVP at the end of their journey. And Brock will be no different. This year, Purdy has quarterbacked the San Francisco 49ers to having the league's most explosive and productive offense in the NFL, as San Fran ranks 1st overall in yards per play, passing touchdowns, and red zone scoring, and is 2nd overall in touchdowns per drive and passing yards. And with production like that, it's not hard to understand why the Niners are averaging slightly north of 30 points per game, own an 11-3 record, and have a league-best 6-game winning streak. And all that is in large part due to Brock Purdy's prolific play at the quarterback position. 14 games into the season, Brock has thrown for a little under 3,800 passing yards, has 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and has posted a quarterback rating of 119. And at first glance, those numbers may not blow you away. We've seen guys throw for more yards, we've seen guys throw for more touchdowns, we've seen some throw for less interceptions, and we've seen some guys with a higher quarterback rating. Okay, that last part isn't true. We've only seen 2 guys in the history of football with a higher quarterback rating for an entire season.
Damn.
But it's the compilation of his statistical achievements relative to his peers across the league that's made his season as magical as it's been. Brock currently ranks second in total passing yards, first in passing touchdowns, first in passing touchdown percentage, first in passer rating, first in QBR, first in passing yards per attempt, first in passing yards per completion, fourth in passing yards per game, and first in passing success rate. He ranks in the top 5 of virtually every single positive quarterback passing metric. And to put in perspective of how otherworldly great that is, since the year 2000, there have only been 6 quarterbacks who have accomplished ranking in the top 5 of every passing QB metric. Kurt Warner in 2001, Peyton Manning in 2004, Tom Brady in 2007, Aaron Rodgers in 2011, Matt Ryan in 2016, and Patrick Mahomes in 2022. And all 6 of those quarterbacks have one thing in common. They all won the MVP award. And for 4 of them, Manning, Brady, Rodgers, and Mahomes, it wasn't a very close race at all, as they averaged receiving 96% of the first place votes. But Brock takes it one step further, as only he, 2007 Brady, and 2001 Warner are the only quarterbacks to rank number 1 in all but 2 or less of the 9 listed categories. Kurt Warner ranked number 1 in every category.
I did not know that.
Brady ranked first in everything but yards per completion, where he finished 4th. And Purdy ranks first in everything but yards per game and total passing yards, where he ranks 4th and 2nd, respectively. So when you watch how he plays, when you look into his stats, and when you look at his numbers relative to his peers and relative to history itself, Brock Purdy is destined to win the award. Now, based off what I've shown, it should be universally obvious that he wins the award. But there are some who don't believe he should. And their reasons are that his team is too good and that his true value to the team is not as great as the stats reflect. San Fran has one of, if not the best defenses in the entire league that ranks either number 1 or in the top 5 in almost every single defensive category. And on offense, Purdy has a solid O-line headlined by future Hall of Famer Trent Williams, the league's leading rusher in Christian McCaffrey, one of the league's best tight ends in George Kittle, and 2 talented receivers in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. That's a very talented roster. But don't even get me started on what some of these other quarterbacks I mentioned earlier had around them when they won their MVP awards. Especially him. Then you add the element of coaching for one of the league's best in Kyle Shanahan, and you can see why people would come to the conclusion that Purdy might be more of a game manager than a game breaker, seeing as how he has so many weapons to throw to that it's almost impossible for him to fail. And the validity of him being one of the league's most valuable players comes into question due to how back in November the Niners lost 3 straight games when Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel were out with injuries. But using those games to question Brock's overall value seems a bit unfair to him, because no other quarterback in the MVP discussion, except maybe Lamar Jackson, lost their starting tackle and a starting wide receiver for a stretch of games and was expected to go out there and perform as if there was no difference. But for Brock Purdy, we tell him go out there and prove your worth. Show us why you should be the MVP when your offense is less than whole. And when he doesn't perform like he normally does, we immediately minimize his value. But that same expectation was never put on any other MVP candidate. They got to perform with their entire teams fully intact for the season. They didn't have the prove your worth games like Brock did. So in essence, you're grading Brock on a test that no one else had to take. But when the playing field is even, and Brock has his entire squad like everybody else, he outperforms his peers. Now, you may be thinking that Brock's squad, when fully intact, is far superior to everybody else's, and therefore, when his team is not whole, it more so resembles the wealth of players that his contemporaries have at their disposal. It basically evens the playing field. But that's just not true. We're looking at the top quarterbacks in the MVP discussion. Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Tua, and Josh Allen. They all, with the exception of Lamar, play on loaded offensive teams, where each of them have one or two receivers on the roster that rank in the top 20 for receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. Then with the offensive line, Philly, Baltimore, and Dallas have the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3 ranked offensive lines in the entire sport. So while Purdy does have a good amount of talent around him, his opponents have relative to comparable talent on their rosters that don't pale in comparison to San Fran's. And at some positions, they have even better than what Brock has to work with. Then on defense, while the 49ers are very good, Dallas is also very good. Baltimore is very good. Miami is very good, and so is Buffalo. So his defense isn't just some juggernaut that carries him in ways that other teams' defenses don't. And lastly, while Brock's 3-game skid was not great, albeit he did not play anywhere nearly as bad as the media made it seem like he did, all of the quarterback MVP candidates have had a game or two that were much worse than how Brock played, and they had their entire teams intact when they did that. Brock didn't. So overall, the MVP award will go with Brock Purdy this season. He has put together a year that very few quarterbacks, and we've seen a lot of great ones in this league, have ever put together. From a statistical standpoint, Brock Purdy has been having an all-time great season. It would be fun to see Tyreek Hill go for 2,000 yards and win the award, and Christian McCaffrey is having a very good year. But the NFL's 2023 MVP is Brock Purdy.
Hey, if I don't win, the award show loses credibility. I appreciate it, man.